Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast. What?
That was like, all of a sudden we're going.
Go. Fine. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators and have worked with just about every major publisher in the publication business in the last 25 years. We've published somewhere around 100 books, and all of us have taught illustration at the university level.
Each week, we're going to come at you guys with a different topic, and we are going to argue about it. We're going to agree with it, and you're going to learn something very, very fancy.
Very good. All right, let's get right down to it. This is our last podcast episode of 2019 of the year. And I just want to throw out a thank you to everybody who listens to this podcast. We love doing it. We love that you guys love it. I've heard from so many people in person and through emails, and you guys have too, about how much you guys enjoy this podcast. So we want to thank you for that, for listening, for downloading, and you're amazing. So thank you for that.
We love loving how much love people.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of love going on surrounding this podcast. So today, what we thought we'd do is kind of look at actually look at the year in review. I've been trying to eliminate kind of out of my vocabulary because I want to mean what I actually say. Okay, so this year, we want to look back at the year for the three of us and talk about some of the things that we've learned. And I figured I'd take the intro of this podcast and have that be the format for our episode. So the intro says this is a podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. So what I was thinking is, the first thing is, I want to ask you guys, what did you learn this year about how to do illustration? Something that you learned new in your drawing or in your painting or in doing a project. What did you learn new about this year that you're going to take with you into the next year?
You talking technique wise, or just anything in your career, like how to be an illustrator?
So specifically, how to do illustration. So it could be like, I found this new pen and I really like how the line makes, or I found this new material, I like how it works. Or it could be, I have a better way to schedule out my time and get more illustration done. What have you learned this year on how to do illustration better? Or what not to do with illustration?
I can answer that one because I have a big one from just today that kind of recaps that perfectly. If you don't pick the thing that you really want to do, you will be busy doing a bunch of things that you sort of want to do. But it'll keep you from the big thing. And that's what I realized at a certain point. If you're just doing all this stuff, busy work, and saying yes to things that don't really drive you to your next level, you may not get to the next level, and you still may feel like you're having a certain amount of success, but it's not the success and the place you want to end up. And for me, my big one was I want to end up a writer, author, illustrator. It's a big thing, but there's other things that come my way, and sometimes they're cool, sometimes I don't like them. It just depends. But if I don't just say no to all that stuff, I won't get to the place I want to be, which is creating my own content.
Yeah, that's really.
Now let me ask you a question, Lee.
Yep.
Do you think that, because I know what you're talking about, and I know what projects, because we've been having this ongoing discussion for a long time about how you have been taking on projects that you don't feel are helping towards your ultimate goal, which is author illustrator. Mm-hmm. And so each time you say yes, you get good money, but it delays that dream for another month, 2 or 3, whatever it is. And it keeps happening. And the reason why I'm not pushing back. The reason why I want to clarify just a little bit is because a lot of our listeners are probably thinking, I'll take the jobs you don't want, right?
Right. Well, Neil Gaiman said it best. I'm going to paraphrase what he said. If you guys haven't heard his commencement speech at I don't know which school he was doing the commencement speech at a graduation, but it is phenomenal. It's on YouTube. If you just Google it, you'll find it. But he said there, like, basically he uses like this, his ultimate goal is like this mountain in the distance, and he should be moving towards that mountain. And in the beginning part of his career, like he might be like, I want to be a writer. And the two options are, I can either deliver pizza or I can write copy. And so which one is close? Which one is going towards the mountain more out of those decisions? Okay, so I'm going to write copy, but that's not where he wanted to be. Writing books was where he wanted to be. So, but the copywriter is the closer path. And so he picks that path. And later on down the road, he gets an option to do a feature for a magazine. Well, he's writing copy now. Is the feature for the magazine moving him more towards the mountain? And he does that. And so eventually he's, getting each thing is a farther advancement than the previous. And so by the time he's at the end, the choices he's making are very different from, delivering pizza or being a copywriter. And so you just got to pick wherever you are in your career, what's going to move you towards the mountain, to use Neil Gaiman's analogy. And where I'm at now is I've already done all these books for other writers. And the only thing that'll move me towards the mountain for me now is author illustrator or nothing.
Could you have clarity of purpose and dream and passion without doing all the crappy jobs and all the mundane assignments?
Could I have happiness without doing all that stuff?
No. Could you have the dream? Could you have clarity of vision without having gone through all that other stuff?
No, I had to, because at that point it was moving me towards the mountain. I feel like, you know what I mean? I was taking new jobs. I was learning new things along the way. But at a certain point, it's actually moving you away from what the goal is. And that's sort of where I'm at now. And then I also realized through this year that I really like fine art. I mean, I like painting gallery type images and I enjoy it. I just enjoy the painting process. I don't always want to have a client that I'm creating for. And that's different. Earlier in my career, I just thought it would be so cool to be published and see your work in print. And now that I've had that enough, it just, your goals change and what you want to do changes. I just like the process of painting.
These are unapologetic leading questions, but one last one before, and Jake's like trying to get in there, but would you say that, that in beginning artists shouldn't worry about what you're worrying about right now, that they should be trying to get those mundane jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, if they don't have experience, then anything is better than nothing. And if you don't have experience, that is the next step, really. I mean, as somebody's transitioning from school or transitioning from another job where they're saying, hey, I'm going to be an illustrator, man, just working with a client is such a huge deal. That's why some of the contests that we run, I always advise people to try to enter the contest, because if you haven't illustrated for someone else, it is a completely different ballgame. And you get good at it after a certain amount of time. You understand, like, hey, here's how I can solve the client's needs and mine at the same time. But man, if you haven't done it before, what we often see is people doing really good images on their own. Then they start working for clients and the images look almost like a different artist because they have not figured out how to bring themselves into client work yet. And so, yeah, at the beginning stages, getting that client work and that interaction and being able to illustrate whatever they're asking for and then bring yourself to it, it's a very hard thing to do, I think.
That's super cool. And going back to the mountain idea with the trails, the closer you get to the top, the trails are closer together as well. So you're at the stage now where you're still making similar decisions as you were maybe 2 years ago, but you just realize, like, this trail is going to take me to that mountain, not this mountain that I'm currently
right, for sure.
I think though too, like, it's totally fine to shift mountains once you get a little bit higher and you have a better perspective. You could see, oh, that's the peak I want to be on over there.
Right. And maybe even to keep this analogy going, maybe you're at the peak of one mountain. You're like, okay, I did this one. Now I got to go. Mountain climbers do that all the time. They do Everest and then they do this other mountain and whatever. So you conquer different things and then move on.
Cool. All right. Well, what about you?
I would say probably, there's several things that I could talk about. Probably the most important one is that I learned that life and art are totally intertwined, and that, a lot of people that listen to the podcast know that I lost my wife towards the beginning of the year, and that I've been remarried. And in that in between time, there was about 3 months where I did not feel like creating any art at all.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always had a priority on making, setting up my life to where it was conducive to making art. And it's just a lesson that I learned. And I don't know how that applies to other people and what they're going through, but I remember when I lost my mom. I know you lost your mom this year too.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing. It really took a toll on my art. So I guess just understanding how important having good relationships are, and the creative process is really, for me at least, is really one and the same. And when they're not going well, so maybe that applies to someone who's really having a hard time coming up with ideas or having the motivation to even make art. I had a few failed attempts where I tried to draw and just false starts. Like I hated what I was drawing and just was like, bag it. I'm not doing anything.
Was there a certain drawing that got you back in? Like maybe you're halfway through it and you're like, oh yeah, this is who I am. This is fun for me. Or what? How did
it was the Inktober project. Thanks, Jake.
Jake saves the day yet again.
Yeah.
I actually want to kind of mirror what Will said. Like he said, I lost my mom this year, and for me, that was one thing. I've always given the advice, like, to people, like, don't beat yourself up if you're not feeling creative after you've had any sort of major life event, or if you do feel creative but you just can't you can't find the time or get into a position to create. Don't beat yourself up, because it takes any major life event, a birth of a baby, a death of a loved one, a move to a new city where you don't know anybody, an illness that you've had to deal with, whether in you or in a loved one. Any of those things can really take a toll on your creativity. And my advice has always been, don't beat yourself up, because it just takes time. You just have to work through it. And I usually say, it takes about a year to get that new equilibrium figured out, maybe 6 months, depending on what the situation was. And here I am, my mom died. She was like the first family member that I've ever had, the closest person to me to have ever died, basically. And she died of cancer, and it happened, we saw it coming, but then it sped up real fast at the end there, faster than any of us expected. And then we threw on top of that, we moved from Utah down to Arizona as well. And those two things combined have just slammed me with feeling like creativity, like I just not feeling creative. And I've still had to like do jobs. I've still had to, perform and kind of keep up with what I've already signed on to do, working with you guys for SVS, doing the books that I've already signed on to, taking on freelance work, because, there's opportunities I couldn't say no to. But in all of these, I felt like I was pretending to be an illustrator. Like none of my creative juices were actually flowing, and I had
so you were just going through the motions, is what you're saying, in a way.
Kind of going through the motions, and I felt like I delivered what people wanted me to, but it was never anything I was. I never felt like it came from a place that only I could create as a creator, where I feel like past things have been that way, where, whatever alchemy is going on in my brain, I can like put things together and be like, okay, that is something new and fresh that I haven't seen before. And I'm proud of that. Everything I feel like I've done was like, I'll just take this, I'll take that, I'll mash them together and I've got an idea, whatever. So, and so I realized firsthand, like these things, and I've moved before and I have kids before, but having both these things hit me at the same time in the year, made me really realize, okay, yeah, it's just going to take time. And it hasn't been until, my Inktober project really helped. That was a lot of fun to do. And that sort of got me into drawing again. And then since then, I've just been doing like some fun drawing that I hadn't done this year really. And I have a sketchbook too that I started in December last year that isn't finished. It still has 20 pages left in it. And usually I'm doing filling 4 of those sketchbooks in a year. If you go back, you can see, bam, finished one, every 3 months, finishing on top of doing all of my other work that I've been doing. And so that just looking at a sketchbook made me realize like there's just nothing in here that feels good and feels like what I wanted to do. That said, and it was even at one point too where I was like, maybe I don't want to be an artist anymore. Maybe I'm just going to write. I'm going to write stories.
Well, that's funny that you say that because I'm just going to use analogies this whole podcast, but I went and saw a writer speak, and she was a novelist, adult novelist, and she's fantastic. And somebody asked her, she'd done a number of books, and somebody asked her how she writes so much. And like they were sort of, the way they were asking the question was romanticizing what it means to be a writer. Mm-hmm. And the writer came back with such a powerful answer. She's just like, don't think that I like writing. Sometimes I love writing. She said, I treat writing like I would a spouse. Sometimes I fight with my writing, and sometimes I don't talk to my writing for weeks on end. Sometimes I'm in love with my writing. And it was a really great, she just kind of framed it like a relationship. Mm-hmm. And I've never heard that before. Like there's always the almost cliche artist thing where we're just always supposed to love our work and we're always just artistic. And what you guys are saying, at least if I'm hearing it this way, is that there's just this ebb and flow, and you just got to kind of hang on and realize it's going to change, but you can't give up during that time either.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, so that's my main sort of illustration takeaway from this year is take the time to work through whatever you got to work. Don't beat yourself up for it, and it will come back. The spark will come back at some point. Somehow, if you loved it before, and if there was a spark before, that spark will come back. So
let me add one more thing to that too. If you have lost the spark and you're looking to get it back, maybe this happened to some of you guys during Inktober, because I saw a lot of posts that kind of reiterated this, but change up your medium a little bit. Earlier today I sent Jake and Will a text saying, when's the last time you guys painted in oil? Oh my gosh. I just started. I've been resisting it because I'm not a patient person, and I don't like the dry times of oil, but I went ahead and I knew it was coming. I kind of felt it for like the past 6 weeks or whatever. And I was just like, all right, I'm diving in, and I painted in oil all morning, and I could not have been happier. It was just luscious and delicious. And it just, the marks were exactly what I wanted them to be. Instead of, I was trying to do the same thing in acrylic and just really fighting it. And, I don't know, you just change your medium. All of a sudden the whole experience can change. The marks change, everything about it changes. And then maybe you bring that back to your normal medium, or, get you going again.
That's cool. All right. So the first part of our podcast is illustration, how to do it. So we talked about what we learned about how to do it this year. Second part is how to make a living at it. So I want to hear one thing you learned this year about making a living doing illustration, something that maybe was a real eye-opener for you, or something that sold really well or did really well, or something that didn't do well and you know not to do that anymore. What do you think, Lee?
I'm going to pass to Will while I ponder my question. I've got some theories, but I need to figure out.
too. You know what? I think I'll pass back to Lee while I think about it.
Why don't I take it? I'll take it, and then you two can be thinking about it. You guys know where this is going. After this, we're going to talk about what has made an impact in the world this year. So be thinking of that too.
Okay.
Okay. So for me, I started a project where. Hold on, pause. Hold that thought. I've got another call. I just want to make sure the dog didn't escape again.
Wow.
Sorry, that was my neighbor again, and they accidentally called. So the dog's fine. Okay. Where was I? Okay.
You're going to talk about something you learned this year in the calendar year.
Yeah.
So if you learned it, let's say December 31st, you can't.
I got it, Will. I know. I'm going to let you go 5 minutes telling me what. Okay. So this year I did a project called Art Drop Club, and I partnered with Aaron Painter. He's our producer here at SVSLearn. And the idea was to take all this art that initially the idea was to take all this art that I had laying around and turn it into something that we could sell. So stickers and prints and, other kinds of merchandise, although we stuck pretty much with postcards, prints, and stickers, something flat we could mail. But then the idea branched out, like, why don't we do all these other artists that we know and love on Instagram, and they've got art laying around that they're not using for anything. Let's contact them, and let's every month have a different artist or a different theme, and just put art out into the world. And we called them art drops. So you would subscribe to it, and you get a drop in the mail, which is basically this package full of art, and it was about $20 a month. And that was like shipping included, and we figured out all the pricing and everything. It was like such a cool, fun project to do, but it was flawed. And we realized this about 6 months into it.
What was the flaw?
It was a flawed business model. And that was people, the idea was have people subscribe. They're gonna sign up for one artist, see the next artist, and just stay subscribed because they like getting this stuff. But what we realized is that we had so many people unsubscribing every month because they weren't interested in the next artist, and it was kind of a hassle to figure out who was unsubscribing. And every month was like a launch. You had to launch again and like announce everything, and try to get back all these subscribers or find new subscribers to subscribe to it. And it was just, it wasn't growing like we expected it to grow. We also got a lot of feedback too that people didn't need any more stickers, or they didn't have any room for prints on their walls, or it was just too much. I think just too much stuff that wasn't, it wasn't, I guess, reusable. You kind of got the thing that you wanted from the artist that you wanted, and you left Art Drop Club. And so we decided it was a really good experiment and a good thing to learn about. And we decided that we weren't going to continue it into 2020 and just turn it off. And that was something I learned. And I don't think we would have figured that out had we not done it. A couple of things that I learned with it too is, I guess not learned, but what was cool about doing it was how much money it did generate and how much of that money went back to artists. And so basically me and Aaron started a thing that made, I don't know, $70,000 or $80,000. And half of that money went to either artists or printmakers or people. Like we tried to work with artists who made stickers, who made prints, things like that. Half that money went back to them, and then half that money, Aaron and I got to split. There was some startup costs too, things there. So all in all, it was kind of a good thing. But at the end of the day, it wasn't. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze. If you know what I mean.
Hey, Will, did you get an invite to this Art Drop Club?
No, I didn't even know about it.
Thanks a lot,
Whatever.
Jake. Wait, we weren't even a part of this thing.
Here's the deal. We decided for the first year, we would only work with Instagram artists who had over 100,000 followers. So remind me again, how many followers?
Elitist.
Okay, next subject.
No, the reason for that was purely because we were hoping to leverage their audience as well. So you got a person with 100,000 followers announcing that they're working with Art Drop Club. That's, a percentage of their followers now know about it. And like it was growing, and it was honestly, I think this thing could evolve to be something really cool in the next, probably need 2 or 3 years of us doing it. But when Aaron and I sat down and evaluated this next year, 2020, what we want to accomplish, what we want to do, what he he's trying to get into the animation industry. I've already got Inktober that takes a ton of my time. I've got SVS that should take a ton of my time, and I've got my own illustration career and all these things. It just seemed like it was one more thing to that was dividing attention between other more worthy projects, probably. So one thing I learned this year was not everybody wants to subscribe to a service that sends you prints and stickers from different artists every month.
Cool idea, though.
Yeah.
And you learn more from the things that don't work. I don't want to call it a failure because it wasn't a failure. But basically, it sounds like it was taking a little more time than you wanted to give it based on the other things you wanted to accomplish.
Well, Aaron got it down to science, and it took some of his time, but he said he felt like he was getting a return on his time investment. For me, I didn't put as much time into it, but I was leveraging my audience attention. And that was what I brought in the startup costs. I brought in the connections to other artists, and also attention from my own following. And what we were finding was the message of Art Drop Club was just getting lost in the mix of everything else. So I had to promote, I'm promoting the podcast. I'm promoting my personal prints that I'm selling in my shop, or t-shirts. I'm promoting Inktober. I'm promoting, a handful of other things. And then I'm throwing in Art Drop Club in the mix there too, and it's just getting lost.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I got my three things.
3 things.
Wow.
3.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear them.
That's how quick I roll. All right, the first step of this year was the header bar for these 3 things is basically streamline. I feel like before, when I was in Portland and living there, and I was remodeling, and then we had a child that we're trying to figure out, and he was younger then, and so how to be a good parent, and then trying to do illustration on the side. I just had a lot of things going at the same time, and none of them took precedent. And every time a new thing happened with any one of those things, it would throw my whole life into a little bit of a spin, and I would deal with just that, but then the other stuff, the other balls in the air would fall, right? So streamlining everything, the first thing was streamlining our finances. So lowering our cost of living was a huge deal. I mean, I've talked about that a little bit on this podcast before, but lowering our cost of living enabled me to now start asking the questions that I mentioned earlier. What do I actually want to do, instead of, oh my gosh, I need to pay something, so I'll take anything that a client throws my way. So figuring out finances to slow down everything, that was step 1. And step 2 was figure out the processes of the things I'm actually already doing. An example for that is we have a pretty robust website and Etsy site for print sales. So somebody puts in an order, and I'd never have that one printed already. So then I all of a sudden have to go print this thing, cut it, bag it, put a postcard in it, figure out how that we're going to do the shipping. And every single time, it doesn't sound like much to do one, but when these get peppered into your week, and then it's sloppy. So I'd be working on a book and I wouldn't get to it. And then all of a sudden that person who ordered the prints now sending me emails and yelling at me. And I just hated it. And so that was just an example of all of it, like how I work with clients, everything. So I tried to figure out, okay, when I get a book, here's how I work, and here's how the illustration process goes. When I get a print order, here's what's going to happen. And I have a whole print wall now. Everything's already printed. Everything's already bagged. And if somebody orders a print, it just goes in an envelope and goes out that day. And it's instantaneous. And it has made such a difference because I love the passive income that prints have. But I never liked that just weird little moment where I had to do all this kind of busy work almost just to get the print out. Mm-hmm. So and I did that in almost everything that I do. Okay, here's anything that I wanted to be doing. I figured out here's the best process to do that and made it kind of formal. And then the last step for me is I realized I don't like working by myself. I like working in a studio with people. And that was the last thing I got in. I just moved in the last part of November to a studio with 9 other professional book illustrators, which is fantastic, and I'm having a great time with them. And that's the last little missing component to, I feel like, what is a solid business model for me.
That's cool. Wow, very concise too.
That was a lot. Impressed. You delivered it well.
Boom.
I'm gonna not even try to compete. I'm not even gonna give you anything. Just kidding.
I highly doubt that.
I don't like that you organized it so well. All right, mine is. It's not really something that I learned this year, but it was reinforced this year for sure. And that is how important developing multiple streams of income are. And, in the first part of my career, I identified myself as a freelance illustrator. And when the work was flowing, it was flowing so hard and furious that I was turning down work constantly and kept a calendar on I would say in 1999 or 98 of every time I turned down a job, I wrote that job and the amount of money that I turned down on that calendar.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
It ended up being about $72,000 that I had turned down, and I had taken almost twice that much. Those were some of my best illustration years. And then things changed in the industry, and without going into a lengthy description of why, you have the internet that came out, which changed a lot of things. You have globalization, stock illustration, just all kinds of different factors hitting all at the same time. And things changed. And anyway, I had developed other forms of income, and now I'm kind of addicted to that, and when a freelance job comes in, I've just started working on these little board books for a publishing company, these little children's, the ones that they chew on, that their parents are like, hey, it's time to read. And the kid grabs it and and the corners are already rounded. They're like, they made sure I knew that. They're like, now don't put anything in the corner. They're already rounded, ready for teeth marks.
You should put a really important thing in all the corners in your illustrations just to have it chopped off.
But yeah, so I get my income coming in from shows, obviously from freelance, from SVS. I have a little money coming in from galleries in our online print shop. I'm looking at doing a couple of Kickstarters this year, and also looking to start doing some licensing on some of the characters that I've created. And I've learned, what's funny is when I had one, I was like, that's the only thing, freelance. And then when I developed the second one, which was teaching, I was like, okay, so it's freelance and teaching. That's going to be great. That's all I need. And then when it was freelance, teaching, and shows, I was like, okay, that's the only 3 that I need. And now I've come to realize there's never enough. And
how do you balance that? Sorry to cut you off. How do you balance that though? At some point, when there's all these irons in the fire,
I think I'm trying to follow in Jake's shoes, really. So he's like,
no one
if you're watching on Jake's YouTube, I wanted to wake him up over there. But basically, one thing that he does is he hires other people, and that's what I'm trying to do. And so. I think the idea is basically that circus act of getting the plate spinning on the dowel, and you have to go back over to the dowel and respin them up every now and then. But I think the idea is you cannot run them all at the same time. You need, and maybe that's not the best example, but because there's one person running all the plates, but you need other people helping you. And you got to pay them.
Yeah. One thing I actually learned this from Cal Newport in one of his books. It's the...
Well, see, me and Jake were talking about that one thing. We read that book last year, whatever. And so this kind of goes counter to that. What do we think about that? Any thoughts?
He's wrong.
Well, in the deep work, he was like, you need to cut out anything out of your day that doesn't help you do deep work out of your work day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, look at all the things you're doing day in and day out. And if there is anything that a reasonably smart college student could handle with 30 minutes of training or an hour of training, hire them out at a fair wage and pass that off to them, because it's going to clear up all that energy and time to go do something that only you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing I've been trying really hard to do is pass off some of these tasks that that anybody could do, or somebody who just has a little bit of training could do, so that I can go make a comic or go make a print. That's something only I can do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Number 3. Did you have anything else you want to add to that, Will?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Number 3. What did you do this year, or what did you learn about doing this year that had made an impact in the world with your art? And by impact in the world, I mean, you can make something for everyone, or you can make everything for someone. You could be the everything for someone. So it doesn't mean that you've impacted 100,000 people or a billion people. It could be that you impacted one person. But was there anything this year that you did with your illustration or with your work that made an impact? Will?
Yeah, so I am working on that. Does that count if I'm working on it?
Yeah, that counts.
Okay, so I haven't done it yet. I can't fully announce it yet, but I will tease it a little bit. That I am writing a self-help book. It is finished as of today because I compiled all the final missing components.
Did our quotes make it in there? Did we make the cut, or did we get cut?
You guys might still get cut. We don't know yet.
I delivered my paragraphs, Lee, right before the podcast today.
My gosh.
I knew I couldn't face Will.
Yeah.
And say, I'll get it to you.
It's the last one. But no, it's a book that I'm going to kickstart hopefully around February. And if everything goes right, February, March. I'm really looking forward to this. This has been a dream for the last 10 years. And finally doing it, finally getting it going. And I'm really hoping that it's like what you said, Jake, it's for the second person you described. It's not for the whole world. It's for that specific person.
Mm-hmm.
It's for me 25, 30 years ago. It's for me. There was a book by Stephen Heller called The Art of Illustration, I believe is what it was called. And Stephen Heller was the senior art director for the New York Times. I don't know if he's still there. He was. He's probably not still. He's probably retired. But he wrote a book, kind of like a manual of how to be a freelance illustrator, and that book was dog-eared by the time I got done with it. I mean, I devoured that book, and that's what I wanted to create for up and coming illustrators, and so that's what I'm going to be launching, and it's so exciting.
That's cool. I'm excited for it too, because I know, I think not since I met you, but at least for the last 5 years, I have heard you talk about this book, and it's so cool for it to finally becoming a reality. We actually might be having dueling Kickstarters in February, so
Mine's going to launch in the beginning of February. When's yours going to launch?
I'll wait until March. I'll wait until next paycheck. All right, Lee, what about you?
It's a good question. I think doing my YouTube channel kind of fits the bill for me. That was more fun than I ever thought it would be. And I've only got like 6 or 7 videos there, but I love the interaction that I'm having with people. It's different because before I launched some of those videos, I just didn't think that some of the content would be useful. I mean, it's stuff that us three probably do every day, things that everybody does every day. Like here's how I do this one thing. And it's become so used to doing that you kind of think, well, everybody's going to know how to do this. Mm-hmm. And so putting out something like how to do great illustrations every time, or how do you come up with a lot of ideas instead of just having one. I know a lot of beginning students have that problem. I just have one idea. How do I get, so I did a video called how to do 50 thumbnails. And it was just so fun to put that out in the world. And, it's short, it's 20 minutes or something. But then to get all these people saying, oh my gosh, I'd never have been able to come up with ideas. And now I can come up with all these ideas, and I've started to utilize this. And each one of the videos is just kind of a personal thing that I'd say, hey, here's something that I do, and maybe you guys will do it. And maybe you can figure out another way to do it that's better, but here you go. And I try to make them kind of concise and to fit a very specific thing for each video. And it's just been the interaction I've had with people all over the world has been really rewarding.
That's so cool. How long have we been telling Lee to make a YouTube channel, Will?
Forever.
Yeah, that's true.
And he's really good at it. And then, it is really rewarding when you can help other people. I mean, like I really feel as an artist that you grow so much more when you're doing that. So
yeah.
Awesome.
I agree. For me, you guys know what it is. What I'm going to talk about, it's Inktober, of course. Will mentioned it himself, how Inktober helped him kind of break out of this creative rut. It helped me break out of my creative rut. This year, though, with Inktober, I tried really hard to emphasize positivity on my social media. In fact, I have a post where it has on a black background with bold white letters that says, "Be nice." And the whole thing was to tell people, like, just be positive. If you have, be supportive. Even if you don't like the art, be encouraging. If it's something that you don't like and you have a negative word to say about it, don't share it. Don't post it online. Just share positivity. And what I noticed this year was there was a lot more of that. And anytime, it was funny to read, to kind of see the community police itself a little bit. Anytime I saw somebody being negative, there would be people commenting on that, basically telling them to shut up and
right, using negative comments using negative comments to help them be positive, right?
No, they basically told people to, like, hey, we're trying to keep it positive here. And so that was the I think that was me trying to have a positive impact this year with the tools that have been given me, and the resources that have been given me, and to try to use them for good. So,
can I add one more here?
Yeah.
One thing we've been chatting about for a long time, Jake, Will, and I have had the school that we run, SVS, it sponsors this website, and we've made so many videos there. And over the year, we've been trying to really figure out how to be better, able to help more people, aspiring illustrators, and help people who go to the site understand it. And that's been pretty rewarding. We came up with a whole curriculum and a track, a kind of a different take on going through an art education online. And we hope it's going to streamline it, because what we realize, there's just a lot of noise out there and people don't know what to do. I mean, when you're self-directed, you're trying to find stuff online, sometimes you just don't know where to start or what to do. And we've tried to address that. And I think that's going to be, it's just getting ready to launch what we have been working on. And I think that's going to be rewarding for us, and it's going to be rewarding for a lot of our students as well.
Absolutely.
Cool. Right on. Well, that is 2019, everybody. I mean, all things said and done, you guys happy with the year? Whether I know it was a bummer for Will and I for some things, but I feel like what we've walked away with, we're better people because of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for joining us. 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com. As we mentioned before, that's where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts have been Lee White, and you could find his work at his website. It's leewhiteillustration.com. Will Terry is our other host, and you can find his work at willterry.com. You can follow him on Instagram at willterryart, and you can follow Lee White on Instagram at leewhiteillo. I'm Jake Parker. My website's mrjakeparker.com, and you can find me on Instagram at Jake Parker. Podcast is edited by Alex Sugg. AlexSugg.com is his website, and that's Sugg with 2 G's. And our podcast is produced by Tanner Garlick. Tanner Garlick, his artwork, he's a fine illustrator as well. His artwork can be found at tannergarlickart.com. And our production manager is Aaron Terry. that's Will's son. Aaron Painter. And you can find Aaron's work at painterdraws.com as well. Go check out their stuff. Everybody does great work. Great work there. So if you like this episode, please share it around. Subscribe to it on iTunes. Subscribe to it on any podcasting software that you like to use or podcasting app. Leave a review if you can. We'd love reading those. We'd love to hear what you think about what we're doing, how we can improve, how we can get better, or what we're doing good so we can keep doing it. And if you're wanting to join in on this discussion, tell us what you learned this year about making illustration, making a living at it, or making an impact in the world with your art. We'd love to hear that over at the SVSLearn.com forums. You're free to join. It's such a lovely community of I guess, like-minded individuals, very positive, very safe. So come there, share with us what you've learned. There's a thread just for this particular episode. And I believe that's it. All right, everybody, thank you, and we will see you next year.